one thing of the ThingsCon community and events is always that we try to connect people from academic, from creative industries with designers, practitioners together to discuss this IoT and things that we do. So I thought what would be a good way to do that this year also, and the studio visit was one of the thoughts that we offer a possibility to really take a look into the studios of some of the companies that we know from ThingsCon also. So yeah, Bart has been a regular visit ThingsCon for the last 7 years, I think. Maybe also brought some colleagues sometimes, and he gave a presentation, I think 2 years ago. Is it already, or is it? Yeah. So I really think that Kiss the Frog is part of our ThingsCon family. So I'm really curious to have a look also in the office, because I've never been there, and hear a little bit about one of these projects that they do. So I will give the floor to Koen. I don't know Koen, I think, but welcome too, and looking forward to hear and see what you're doing. Thanks.
All right, thanks for the introduction, Iskander. Yeah, I'm here with my colleague Stephanie as well. She sits over there. Today I decided to do this presentation from the studio itself. It's really quiet here, but well, you can see our main office and our main conference table now. So my name is Koen. I am a design lead at Kiss the Frog. We design interactive experience for, let me go to my slides. Interactive experiences for museums, science centers, brand experiences. We do that from the first visitor journey to all the technology that we need. We are no hardware supplier, but we know a lot of the ins and outs of all kinds of technology that we use. Our main customers are Lego, we work for Heineken, National Geographic, all around the world actually. What you see here is a project we're working on for Frog. It's a museum in Stockholm. We're doing a diving experience for a shipwreck that is the main exhibit in the museum. So we are a company of 32 people. Everything we do in-house. We don't work with freelancers, but we have motion designers, graphic artists, game artists, firmware programming, everything we do in-house. And this is our studio. So let's take a look inside, a short look inside. On our walls are all the heroes of me and my colleagues. Here you see our toilets, you see our kitchen, and this is the office itself. All of us, we really like telling stories, so I think what you see on our walls are the stories that most people like. Again, you see it's pretty empty these days. If you look really well, you might see one of the colleagues somewhere in between all these wood. One thing that's not on one of these photos is our workshop. We have our own workshop that we use for testing equipment, making prototypes, testing everything we do. So I was asked to tell you something about one of the projects we do as well. And today I'd like to tell you something about the project we did for the US Olympic and Paralympic Museum. This is a museum dedicated to US athletes and their stories. And the interesting thing about this museum is that they treat Olympics and Paralympics equally. And that might sound very logical, but there are over 30 museums in the world covering Olympics. And this is the only one out of 2 that covers Paralympics as well. So that's the starting point, but that's not the only thing that they want. They also wanted to have the gold standard of accessibility. They wanted to be the most accessible museum in the US. In great American terms, they want to be the best. So this was our goal. They wanted to be 100% accessible. Every exhibit should be accessible by every visitor, and they would rather do that through inclusive design than through making different versions of exhibits or different versions of content or different versions of experiences. So it should be equal for everyone. And when we started this project 2.5 or 3 years ago, accessibility and inclusivity was already a hot topic, but that didn't make it less of a challenging ambition. Our goal for this project was to build 16 interactive exhibits, and those exhibits should enable everyone to participate equally and independently. Even more, they wanted us to exceed the gold standard if possible. So for who were we doing this? For everyone, basically everyone. People with permanent temporary or situational problems isn't a good word, but disabilities. When you start thinking about disabilities, most people think about people in a wheelchair or people that are blind. But when you're making solutions, they are not only for people with permanent disabilities, but you help a lot of people that have a problem for a very short time as well. So the group is much bigger than that we initially thought of. So I'd like to give you some insight in the approach we had and what we found out and all the things that we learned, or well, not all the things, but some of the things that we learned. So to begin with, the strategy that we had for this project was that we wanted to do it as universal as possible. So that means that we would include all people in our design thinking. We prioritized inclusivity above making things more visually nice or adding functionality that only a small group of people could use. And if that was not possible for some of the exhibits or some of the solutions, then we would offer a way to adapt the experience. And we use RFID technology for this. So these are lanyards, and every visitor in the museum gets this lanyard. And it has a long-range RFID tag in it. And as soon as you approach one of the exhibits, it would adapt to everything you need. I will dive into that a little deeper later on in the presentations. This would mean that if you needed bigger letters on your screen, a bigger font size, you would get that, well, in the seconds before you arrive at the screen, you would see that. So we also had an approach for the design, which sounds logical, but we don't see it that often. Together with our concept and AV partner, we created a set of design rules. So we had a consistent interface, common UX patterns, and most importantly, we took a look at the exhibit design and defined safe interaction zones and comfortable viewing heights for all the exhibits. And that brought us into the first problem that arrived, because when we designed the area for this screen, we immediately noticed when we were testing the first prototypes that this would be a great height for people in a wheelchair and a great height for kids. But if you were a little bit taller, tall Dutchman, you needed to get down, dive into the lower half of the screen before you could use it. And so here we already noticed that to do this really good, even at exhibit design, you already need to take care of these kinds of things. So in this case, it would have helped if part of the screen was already placed lower or higher into the exhibit design. Another early selected solution was to use keypads for all the exhibits. So what you see here is one of the interactives that we built. It's about the torches from the Olympic Games. You see them here in the glass cabinets, and all the exhibits are also you can also use with this. Well, these are arrow keys that you see in here. I don't know if you see my mouse. But how do you control a touchscreen if you are blind? We've seen the solution in the Museum of Human Rights. It's one of the first museums in the world that actually did something with accessibility a few years ago. And this was a really proven solution that we've seen there, that you can just use this keypad to control your screen, control your interactive solution. And it also allows us to apply screen reading technology, so that would mean that every object that you navigate to would be spoken out by the exhibit. This was a pretty easy solution to implement. It also worked pretty well. We had some issues with navigational paths. How do you control a keyboard using only arrow keys? But all in all, it went pretty well. Until we tested it with a younger group of people, and we found out that all these people are using screen readers and touch on their mobile phones for a couple of years already. Screen reading technology exists for almost 20 years. Maybe one of you ever pressed a random shortcut on Windows and entered the narrator application, which speaks everything you do on Windows. We didn't, or at least I didn't expect it, but a lot of people are actually using this kind of software, which allows you basically to just use your thumb and finding out on the screen what is happening where. And that worked pretty well, but it means, well, what it means for us was that we thought, we need this too, to make it accessible for everyone as well. The principles are pretty simple, but in the end, it's doubled our work. But it allows now everyone, even to use touchscreen exhibits at this museum, to just use it by touching the screen. Took a lot of time to get that correct, but it's something that we never thought of in the beginning of the project. So for these exhibits, well, I showed you the list of all the different handicaps that you can have. In the end, this meant that we had a lot of settings for people for all these exhibits. So all the software we made, you could change text sizes, contrast, you could have screen reader, you could have audio description, closed captions, and sign language. And because everyone has their unique profile, you could set this setting like you would want it. But we had some problems with marketing department, because if you ask every one of your visitors when they are entering the museum, well, select what you want, they were afraid people would not get to the field of entering their email address. So we needed to move all these settings to the end of the registration area. And then we decided, well, do we really need all these settings? Because subtitles, you can just, are they really that annoying for people that don't need them? We are pretty used to subtitles in the Netherlands, but in the USA, that's a little bit different. But in the end, we came up with a solution where things like subtitles and sign language is just enabled by default for all visitors, and that would make it. That makes this a very much more universal and inclusive design. So during the project, more and more we learned what would be the best inclusive approach, and it allowed us to making things easier and simpler, skip things like all these settings. So don't ask became our principle. Another example is this interactive that uses real bows where people can try archery. Most of them do that for the first time in their lives. We have a whole floor in the museum that's about training in the Olympics. So you can also do a sprint against Jesse Owens, or try a skiing activity. And this example, especially archery, how do you aim at a sight when you're visually impaired, when you're blind. So we had to think about things that. We'll get to the next. Take a drink because I'm losing my voice. So here you see the side where you need to aim. The solution here was simple. We just added car beeps to help people navigate. And our don't ask approach here also meant, well, everyone will get these beeps, making the whole area a little bit annoying because you will hear beeps all the time. So there was a constant balance between making things accessible and making things less easy or more difficult to use for others. And also the other way around, we had this issue because we wanted to not only have examples of Olympic Games, but also of Paralympic Games. So I don't know if you know the game Goalball. This is a Paralympic game that is specifically designed for people with visual impairments. So you play it with dark glasses, so everyone can do the game in the same way. And the ball has a bell in it. So we made a game that works with sounds, and you need to react on the sound. So how do we make this game playable for people with a hearing impairment? And we added a visual guide for people that have a hearing impairment, and that would make the game very simple for people with good vision. So again, here we needed to find a good balance and had a lot of testing and fine-tuning to make the games really, really playable for everyone. We did a lot of testing, and also this makes it a lot more. We learned a lot from testing. But we tested it with both Paralympians, we tested this with school groups, and here we had to find a balance between Paralympians that wanted the games to be very authentic, we want kids that wanted the games to be fun, and still it needs to be playable for everyone. That was the main goal. So in the end, what did we learn? We had to create design rules and we had to stick to them. We had to aspire the golden standard, and we had to test, and we had to learn from others. And what you see here sounds logical, maybe even a bit cheesy, but taking inclusivity and accessibility into account in the entire workflow was a lot more than that. So what we learned at the end was you need to begin with architects, marketing. The whole company needs to be on the same level and the same ambition, but you still need to be pragmatic about your rules. It was nice of us to think that we could achieve a golden standard, but that would, how can I say that? Don't think you can just set or achieve a golden standard. It's nice if you are an American, you think you can be the best. But be a little bit pragmatic about your solutions. The Youth Olympic project was an excellent example of what we could reach, but still you see it's very difficult to find a good balance between all these solutions and keep it accessible for everyone. What I learned here is inclusivity and accessibility are not the same thing. We read a lot of books about accessibility, a lot of books about inclusivity. It took us a long time to find a good balance between those two. It's not the same. This example that you see here is a stair. I think it's in Canada, and it's designed very inclusively because the whole architectural aesthetics It's pretty nice, and it's not if there is a single path around the chair that is then for wheelchairs, but it looks like this is a chair for everyone. But in the end, this chair is very dangerous, both for people that are taking the stairs normally, and it's far too steep for wheelchair users. So we made a couple of guidelines for ourselves saying, well, be inclusive in your story and be accessible in the way you tell your story. And you need to think about your goal. I like this example because this shows what inclusivity and accessibility means if you do it in a pragmatical way. These gates at the central stations of the Nederlandse spoorwegen. It would be really inclusive if all these gates had the same height, but that doesn't make it any more accessible, especially if you take all the visitors that could come in and out of trains every day. So I'd like to show you one last picture here. If you really go the wrong way. Thanks a lot for listening. Thanks a lot for looking into our office and the things we do. If you'd like to know more about inclusive design, we've written down our pragmatic approach in a small guide. So just let us know if you want to know more, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Super, thank you, Koen. It's a nice look into the office and especially this project. I see already there are 2 questions from Koen in the chat. So maybe we can jump into to our questions. So the first one is about if you also have cases where you design for people with cognitive impairments. So.
Yeah, that was a pretty difficult one also in the US Olympic and Paralympic Museum. People with cognitive impairments like autism, we decided to have special time slots for this group. So in these time slots, we dimmed the lights. We had other types of animations and movies showing around in the projected areas. So if you enter this building, there's a screen that's 10 meters high, showing videos of Olympians and Paralympians. And during these time slots, these animations were turned off much slower. So that was the solution here, because we couldn't find any other solutions that would make the environment, if you don't have an autism or a cognitive impairment, the richness of the Olympics, like we had an exhibit about the intro show, the opening ceremony. The opening ceremony. And it has such richness in visuals and sound. There was no way we could make a version of that would be as rich as that we wanted to let you experience that. That would be also accessible for people with cognitive impairments. So the only solution we had here was separate sessions.
I can imagine. Also, I was also thinking: is it if you try to make it accessible, or is it mainly about you're designing an experience in your kind of the framing of your own of our own senses, so to say, of our own capabilities, and do you try to create something that makes it also accessible for these others, or do you maybe try even think you can also say, well, let's start from the whole basics of the experience and see what kind of different experiences you can create. I can imagine that if you are visually impaired, for instance, you have a totally different experience of spatial environment, so you could use very different types of triggers than when you are not impaired, so to say. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. That I think that's one of the things that that you need to do from the start. If you're doing the interior design of the building, these are the things that you can think about if you start from scratch with a project like this. Yeah, very interesting.
Okay. I see another question about haptic feedback. Is that also part of this as a tool for this? I think.
Yeah, in the beginning of this, we started with in the beginning of this project, we started with a device that we would give to visitors that would require, like we have the keypads that are integrated in the furniture. We wanted to create a device that has the keypad integrated into a mobile-like device. The cost of this were too high for the museum, so in the end we needed to stop with the research we were doing for this. But we had haptic feedback as one of the features of this, and I think it's a really helpful way. Instead of using sounds, it's more individual, so that could help also help making the experience more equally for everyone. Yeah.
No. So, okay. I see another question. How long does the project take in total? This project. This is easy to explain to customers that the project can take longer due to user testing. So it's always, of course, an interesting question for how much time you can spend on user testing and how that works. How does that work for your kind of projects you do?
Yeah, I don't know when this project started. We started, I think, 2.5 years ago. If you don't count the whole part before we got the assignment. It definitely took longer, specifically the development of all the software. Also because we are here in Delft and they are there in Colorado Springs, which means that for every test, installation test, we had to get there for a couple of weeks or for a week to see what would be possible. I don't know if it's just in your total workflow, if it has to take longer than a project without all these options, because you need to test those as well. So we had the normal range of alpha tests and beta tests with our customer that we would regularly have. And to answer the other question is if it's easy to explain to customers that a project takes longer. In the cases that we have done this until now, it's mostly the customer that specifically asks for these kinds of functionality. If not, we are the ones trying to promote it in the things that we do. And then it's more about the costs than it's about the time of this functionality. So some of the museums we work with use the time slots for more of the impairment. So they have special moments of the day where a guide helps people that have disabilities using the exhibits, because that's a cheaper solution for them. So it's not necessarily about the time, I think, but more about the costs, which is a shame.
Okay. Cool. So I'm looking into the chat. Are there any more questions, or maybe there are people that have their mics? No, I don't think there's anyone that can speak except for us. Yeah, you have these strange choice in the beginning that you can choose for microphone or listen in only, and people think that they can easily switch from listen in to mic, I think, but you really have to to remove your audio. But chat is working fine. So if someone has a question, last question, or maybe not that, then we do that via chat. So I'm otherwise I'm thinking, do I have really? You're also creating a kind of fashion line now. I see with this t-shirt. So, but what's the So yeah, very much very interesting. Is this this project is already? you probably told that, but is already up and running, or is it still in progress?
Yeah. The museum opens in the I think end of July, starting of July, somewhere in July.
Okay. And what was the experience? Or are you able to check how it is used now?
Well, it's a lot more quiet because of the whole COVID operation.
Of course, yeah.
Of course. Yeah. But I think in general the critics are very, very good. We're still fine-tuning some of the experiences as well. I think we're fine-tuning a lot more than we usually are for these kinds of exhibits. But in general, it's good.
I can imagine that it is indeed much more kind of a iterative process, even that you really want to experience how people.
Yeah, and it's also tough for us because we I think since we went there for the last time, beginning of the year for the last beta tests, and the whole installation we had to do remote. So we had eyes on the floor, but we couldn't see exact timings and fine tunings. So we had asked to people to try things out. That was very tough. It took a lot of time and a lot of gray hairs at some of the developers over here.
I can imagine. But maybe more in general question, in these kind of projects, are you really working towards kind of a delivery moment, or how do you say that in building stuff, or is it something that you deliver and then you are involved in keeping it up to date, or is it continuously improved or changed or added stuff, or is it more like one big bang project most of the time?
Yeah. In most of the cases, we have a big deadline, a screaming deadline, and after that we go in maintenance mode. The first week we always take a look at how things are going and if we need to improve. And we have a lot of clients that come back after a few years for new exhibits or new experiences. So once in a while we update old stuff. But after a project is finished, most of the work is done, and there is no iterations on the experiences after that, which for some cases would have been nice. But
I can also imagine that it's a great learning experience for yourself to see how it is used and what's happened, and you can track almost how people use it, and then that is kind of a knowledge base for yourself to the next.
Yeah, it would be great if we could get that kind of learning system into the budget of our projects. But most of the clients want to have it perfect before opening. They don't want to have any gaps in the building before opening as well. So that complicates it a little bit.
Cool. Well, super nice to hear about the project and how you're really struggling, or not struggling, but trying to get this inclusiveness.
Oh, we struggle, definitely.
We struggle, of course, also. To get it in, and so I have a final question to everyone in the room, if there's any burning question. Otherwise, we call it a day, and we're going to enjoy the evening. And I invite you all, of course, to have a visit, to have visit the next sessions, and that's tomorrow. Finally, starting from 11 till 6, I think we have some laid-back keynotes, but also very interactive. You can ask your questions, so be there. Thank you, Koen. Thank you, Bart and Stephanie, also for showing us around, and hopefully I will also repeat that sometime in real world.
Yes, let's hope so. Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks all for listening.
Super. Thank you very much. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.